this is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for isms. Now, every time I do a show called Isms, this is one of many that we do at New Cleveland Radio, people say, "Oh, why isms? Where did you get that name from?" Well, one day I was sitting around realizing that I just didn't have a lot of joy going on in my life. And if I did, I was suppressing it. And I thought, I have to think more positively. I have to think of the words that end in ISM that make me smile. And I started thinking about them and was like, I wonder what other people think of when they need to be happy, be smile, because the reality of it is no one else can make us do it. We have to want to feel good. My guest today, and I'm quite proud to have him on, is a professional keynote speaker, and yet he's on isms with me today at New Cleveland Radio. His name is Phil Barth, and if you look behind Phil, you'll see that he is a collector of many things, but one of my favorites is baseball. So, Phil, tell us, how did you develop into this speaker that's helping us overcome our internal negativity, because we all have that?
Well, thanks for having me. First off, I'm thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be speaking with someone from Cleveland. Got my representing right now. How did I come into speaking about positivity? I was a speaker from 2011 on, and not full time, just kind of dabbled in it. 2015, I was competing in the Toastmasters World Championship of Public Speaking. I had competed for years. 2011, I actually made it to the final 9. And I was hoping in 2015 to get back. I had made it, excuse me, through the districts, which meant I was in the top 100, and was heading to Las Vegas at the end of the summer to compete for the World Championship. Well, 1 week before I was supposed to go out to Las Vegas, I had a heart attack. And so, like a lot of people, I'm sure, that have had a heart attack, I went through the why me, the poor little old me. I heard somebody call it being a why baby. Just why? Because I didn't smoke. I was not in top shape, but I was in decent shape. I didn't have a family history. So why did I have a heart attack? And the answer is I did. And the second answer I got was from the surgeon. And he said, you have a lot of stress in your life. You need to manage your stress. I never even thought about stress. But when I stepped back and looked at it, I realized I did have a lot of stress. So he said, I want you to promise me that every 3 months you will take 1 week and unplug. And I said, okay. And my wife was in the room, which meant I had to do it. That's kind of a binding contract. You're down now, buddy. So recovery took me from August to January. I went back to work, and at the end of March, my wife said, it's time. It's time to unplug. Now, I was still in the recovery process, therapy, et cetera. She said, we're not going on a vacation, but you're going to take a week off, and we're just going to do little day trips I now live in the greater Cincinnati area. We can do day trips. So the first day we went to the Cincinnati Zoo. Just a little trip with our youngest son. At the end of the day, I got on Facebook. I said, here were the great things that happened today. First time I'd ever done this. And I talked about seeing a baby cheetah, having a picnic with my wife and son, seeing the gorilla exhibit, and so on. And I got all kinds of likes. And if you're on Facebook, and you get the likes, right? That's the validation. Woohoo! So the next day, we went to the art museum. And at the end of the day, I said, I'm going to try again. Here's the great things that happened at the art museum. And so every day that week, I listed the great things that had happened. And at the end of the week, I thought, well, I'm going back to work. Can I still find great things? And how long can I keep that up? It will be 10 years in about a month, less than a month. You know what? It might be 10 years by now. 10 years I've been finding great things that happen. Now, what I stumbled into there was the ultimate stress management tool, in that I was training myself and training my brain to look for the good. And when you look for the good, that doesn't give you enough time to look for the negative and the bad. And so my brain was giving me all these good hormones as I'm looking for what's good. And then the brain's like, oh, that's what you want. Well, here's something, here's something. And it became easier. And so now for 10 years, I have been on this constant mission to find what's good in life. And it's really helped.
It's interesting because most of us don't realize how much control we have over our brain.
Mm-hmm.
We blame everything on those negative thoughts going on. And we don't stop and ask ourselves, well, why are they going on? Yes, maybe I heard those for the first 20 years of my life. But you know what? I'm here now. Do I have to believe it? Or even if they're true, how can I make them better than the
Mm-hmm.
way they're sounding? And that's what happened when my husband started taking me to the comedy club when I was going through depression. It was like, Karen, I don't care if you laugh or not, but I'm going to take you there. And maybe your brain will start connecting with something. And eventually, what it started connecting with, I can laugh. I can find something good. And that happened to be during the middle of the winter. Now, if you know Cleveland at all, which it sounds like you do, winter in Cleveland is gray and cold.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care for winter at all. And that year, I decided I had to look out at that gray sky and realize the sun was on the other side of the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And every day when I did that, it was like I could feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it was only for a second or two, but that's okay because it kept growing.
Yep.
And like you, I took that further in trying to share with people, yeah, find something good that excites you today. There's got to be one thing, even if it's I woke up.
Yep.
So you did this first week with your family. You saw these great things. You took it into work. Were you enjoying your work at the time, or was it just a job that you were going to? Now you had to find things that you liked.
It was up and down, depending. I was in IT, and some of the projects really were a lot of fun. I worked with sales and marketing teams around the globe. So when they would have their annual meetings, hey, you got to come to our annual meeting on the beach with lots of good food. Well, okay, twist my arm. And a lot of fun people. There were other times when it wasn't fun. And I remember going back in January, my boss talked to me, and I had a project that I really, really wanted us to do. I really thought it would make a difference. And he said, by the way, while you were out, we decided to cancel that project. And I said, okay. And he's like, okay, you're not going to get mad about it? I said, no, there's no point. He said, what changed in you? And I wanted to like go, I had a heart attack. But I didn't say it that way. I said, after the heart attack, I now realize what's important. And if the company doesn't want to do that project, that's fine. We'll find something else to do. So the answer is up and down. But with the changed attitude, I realized that the good is going to come again. It's like you said, right? It's gonna the sun will shine in Cleveland again. That's what I always liked during the winter down here. It's really great, and you get on an airplane to go somewhere, and you're like, oh wow, the sun's still here, right? So you realize that there's going to be sun. You can't have 100% positive. Zig Ziglar once said, all sun and no rain makes for a desert. So you deal with the negative things that come your way, but you don't focus on them. And the other thing I tell people is you don't go out and actively look for what's bad. So if you turn on the news first thing in the morning, odds are no matter what station, there's going to be bad news for you to wallow in. So don't do it. You stay informed, but don't dwell. And I tell people, get rid of the optional negativity in your life, whether it's news, people, whatever. As much as you can, take out the optional.
So the heart attack woke you up, but it was your doctor who put it on the table. You obviously have a relationship with your wife that if something is said, you got to do it. My husband and I have been married 41 years, and he will say yes, and then he will like, I'm not going to do that at all. So, um, God forbid if he had a heart attack and he was told to take a week off every 3 months, um, I'm not sure he would. Although maybe he would just take time off indefinitely. I don't know. But the interesting thing that I have learned when I first met my husband, he was an extremely positive gentleman. I came from a family that always had to point out the negative,
Hmm.
but I never heard the positive woven into it until I got older. So younger, I only heard the negative, you know, Karen, you don't look good with long hair. Karen, if you were 10 pounds thinner, whatever. And so I hung on to it all, that I was not good enough. It wasn't until I sat down with my parents one day after my husband and I got married, and I said, boy, I wish I was more like Richard. He's happy all the time. He can hear that there was a devastating flood 2 streets away from us, but he'll find some positivity in it that we didn't get flooded. And my parents said, well, we fed you positivity. And they started repeating the negative things they said, added on the positivity. I said, why didn't I hear those things? He said, because you chose not to. And they
Hmm.
were right.
Yep.
So part of it is you had to make a commitment to be positive.
Yes. 100%. And, and my wife helped in that. So I and I still dabble in sarcasm. I mean, come on. And I don't want to sit here and say, even though she might be able to hear me, I don't want to sit here and say I 100% listen. I'm a
Yeah.
guy. I'm a guy.
Yeah.
Uh, and by the way, congrats on 41 years. We are 35 this year. So
Wonderful.
so yeah, there are times, but in this case, the other thing the doctor said was, well, you had a couple of small arteries that were blocked for this heart attack. It could have been the widowmaker. Do you know why they call it the widowmaker? I'm like, yeah, I can use my context clues here and
Yeah.
know that I wouldn't want that one. So I was going to do whatever he said because the other option was not something I wanted to think about. So in that way, but I also knew with my wife there, and she did. You know, sometimes I want to do that, and then I forget. Right? She said, "Okay, you said you would do this," and she knew it was for my own good. So yeah, we have a great relationship, and she has a lot. She brings a lot of positivity to the table, and I just need to get rid of, like I said, some of that optional negativity, and maybe not be sarcastic 100% of the time.
Got it. So I know in the workforce, and especially in IT, because my husband's also in IT, that some days are so rewarding because you figure things out one after another, and it's like, voila, I resolved this. And there are many other days that turn into weeks or longer. Nothing wants to go right. He was just on a project this past winter where he was working in a factory system, but all their equipment was still computers from the 80s because that's what their factory works on. So getting software for back then is very difficult.
Yeah.
And it still has to talk to the internet. So you're trying to upgrade. And he would come home day after day, like pulling his hair out of his head. And he's going, I work all day long. I have nothing to show for it. And I said, but they can't expect you to show anything for it.
Right.
And he kept saying, I know, but that's not in me. So a lot of his positivity started becoming negativity
Mm.
because he wasn't producing what he felt he should produce. How do you help individuals who have always been this positive force now, whether it be work, the news, their family, that has just pulled them
So the first thing I tell people is, I tell my story, right? I've been where you are. And oh, by the way, I retired from IT just a little over a year ago, so I could be a full-time speaker. But I remember those days, as you were talking, I remember maybe even on when a project is going good, some days I remember sitting there at 3 o'clock and go, wow, if I work another 5 hours, I might be able to get back to where I was at the start of the day, because everything goes wrong and you go back and back and back and back. So I get that, and that probably happens in every career, but it certainly did in IT. And then the next email comes through, and so on. So I say all that to say that I can tell people I've been there, and I get it. And when you start being positive, it will continue. Just try it. And the other thing I do is when I'm doing a seminar or something, I will tell people, all right, 10 minutes. I want you to write down as many positive things, as many things you're happy for, as many things that bring you joy in life as you can. Whoever writes the most gets a copy of my book. And you will have people 50, 60 things that they do. And then I say, all right, everybody raise your hand. Okay, if you got less than 10, hand down, and so on and so on, until one person has their hand up. How many do you have? And it's been as many as 50 some, which is amazing. That's one every 12 seconds for 10 minutes. And I say, okay, would you please read some of yours? And the rest of you, if you don't have that, but you're thinking, yeah, I should have written that down, go ahead and write it down. And it's amazing. The pen start, they'll say something like my grandkids, and people, oh, forgot about my grandkids. Oh, I have a job that pays me. Oh, yeah, and so on. And what happens is everybody gets a full list. And then I say, okay, take that list home with you. And every day, look at that list. If something's going wrong, look at the list. Add to the list. And you're going to find that little things will make it to that list. And once you start wiring your brain to think about that way, that helps. The other thing I do is when I talk to leaders, I tell them, look, if you want to lower the stress in your organization, you need to model the behavior. People are watching you. If you are sarcastic, if you are negative, that's going to happen in your organization. If you are positive and upbeat, that's going to happen. You want less stress? Show less stress yourself.
I love that. I love that. My son, who I mentioned to you before he went on, he works in baseball, and he's not a baseball player, but he works in baseball. And he just started a new position about 3 months ago. And he was told going into it, this is probably going to be the most stressful position you're going to be in, because this department has not done well in years. We basically have ignored it. And typically he does not work well under stress, but he has turned it around, because he looks at it and says, if I fix this, look what else I can do. And I happen to be his sounding board. So about once or twice a day, I get a phone call, which he spews out all the negativity. But at the end, he'll say, but you know what? If I do this now, when I hang up from you, I will have solved one of my problems today. And next thing I know, the phone goes click, and he does that. And I asked him where he got that change. And he said, the last 2 places I worked, if things weren't going right, they needed to point the finger. And he said, and I realized none of us are perfect. So yes, we're going to make mistakes. So let's learn from those mistakes. And when he walked into this job and he saw this list that they provided him of all the things that haven't been working properly, he said, most people would have turned around and said, forget the job. He said, Mom, you do one step at a time. And that's what you seem to have done.
Absolutely. I'm on. Okay, I was just double checking my microphone. There was some background noise a little bit ago. So yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple things as you were saying that just really popped in my mind. Number one, you being the sounding board. That you need to have that sounding board. And I have been that for my sons. The middle son, it took like calculus and things that I don't understand. But I mean, I had to take some of them to get into IT, right? Yeah. And so he will talk to me and he say, I I had this calculus problem, Dad, and he describes it all, and he might as well be talking Greek to me, but he's talking through it, and I'm okay, yeah. And he goes, and then if I just do this, and then he goes, thanks, Dad. I'm like, sure. Older one is following in computer, but way more technical than his dad. Same deal. Oh, I'm having this problem with writing an app or whatever, and talks through it, and every once in a while I'll be able to say, "Have you thought about this?" But 9 times out of 10, when he says something, it's like just having someone to talk to lowers the stress. He's no longer in his own head. He's actually thinking, okay, I got to describe this to someone else, and voila, the solution presents itself. So that was the first thing. Second thing you talked about was, I love that your son said we're going to learn from our failures. It's probably in my bio, and if it's not, I'll tell you right now. I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I mean, this was just this year. I was watching a game show, and the name of the executive producer came up, and I was like, that was the guy who was an associate producer back in the day on Millionaire. I knew him. And so I sent him a message on LinkedIn. Hey, just wanted to say thanks. See you're doing well. Didn't expect anything back. He said, hey, could we talk? And we talked for an hour because he wanted to know about speaking. And the thing that really stuck with me was, as a producer for Millionaire, they had the celebrity millionaires where all of the celebrities come on. And he said, I learned the difference between celebrities and the rest of us. And it's one thing. When they fail, they don't let it stop them. They learn from it and move forward. And he gave examples. I was like, holy cow, that's it. When you fail, failure happens to everyone. You have to say, what have I learned, and move forward.
Well, when I talk about failure to my clients, I remind them, when you were a little kid and you were learning how to ride a bike, how many times did you fall off that bike? And those skinned knees, they hurt. And seeing the blood made you cry even louder. I said, but most of us got back on the bike, even when we were crying, and we rode our bike.
Yep.
So we learned from the mistake that tumbled us over. Sadly, when I was also growing up, I kept hearing my parents say, well, do it right. Do it right. But they didn't explain how to do it right. It was just like, you should know.
Yeah.
And I was an okay student, but not a great student. And I decided my senior year, first semester, I'm going to take typing because my mother said every woman should have a fallback. So you could be a secretary if you could type. I am proud to say I failed typing. My mother was appalled. How could you? I didn't understand where to keep my fingers and not to look at the keyboard. Surprisingly, about 20 years ago when I started blogging, my mother said to me, how do you do that? I said, my computer. But you're typing. I said, yeah. I said, I learned how to do it because I like doing it. I did not want to take typing growing up. So what did I learn from my failure? It wasn't that I couldn't type. I could if I would have concentrated on it, but there were more important things for me to do.
Yes.
I was in choir. I was in debate. I did all the things that I enjoyed doing. So yes, it's on my transcript. I failed typing. I still graduated from high school.
Yeah.
But if we can learn from those failures.
Absolutely. That's key. And and do what you love.
Yep, exactly. Now I know you talk about something that I really have to understand. It's called your internal chickens.
Yes.
What is an internal chicken?
So I kind of stumbled into this topic. I guess I just keep my eyes open and open-minded to figure out a topic. But one of the things that years ago I said, what's holding us back isn't necessarily outside forces, right? It's those voices inside of us, fear, negativity, self-doubt, those things. And I said, at the time, I just was like, they're chickens, and I didn't have rubber chickens at the time, and I actually, when I spoke, was acting like a chicken and using a chicken voice. And the first story that I ever really developed was getting up the courage to ask my wife out on the first date. It's a coworker, and the chickens are saying she's out of your league, and you'll fail, and then you'll be embarrassed, and you'll never be able to work with her again, and all those voices. And I finally got the courage, and eventually I just used rubber chickens as the prop, so I don't have to walk around like a chicken all the time. And and the idea is they're little, right? These little rubber chickens that are in your head saying, you're going to fail, and I tell people you need to ignore them. You need to take them out and fry them. That's the new book, Fry Your Chickens, and it gives strategies for how to defeat the doubtful Dave. Oh, I doubt you're going to be able to do this. They're going to look for somebody else. Or one of them I call Look Back Lena, where you can't do this because remember when you failed way back when. And I think we were talking about this before we got started. Remember the failure from 1983 or whatever. And so I give strategies for getting these little chickens and frying them. And the audience, when I start, I toss rubber chickens to the audience. Everybody loves a good rubber chicken. So, and a lot of them have my little QR code for my website.
Yep.
So it's my business card. And I buy them in bulk. And I put on Facebook at one point, I said, I'll bet if you had asked in high school who's the most likely person to have rubber chickens as a tax write-off, it would have been me.
I love it. I love it.
So yeah, I use rubber chickens, and then the one I end with is the one chicken you need to be afraid of, and I call it the red rooster of regret. So that's 29-inch chicken. I'm just going to play him for a second. But I bring somebody up from the audience, and I have them squeeze them. And if you give them a big squeeze, I've never had this happen, but it's come close. He will squawk for 45 seconds.
Oh, wow.
And it's loud and it's obnoxious, and everybody laughs and they give applause to whoever was the lucky one that got to squeeze the chicken. And the point is that was really a bad experience listening to him, but it's not nearly as bad as giving in to these little chickens and then having the big chicken of regret later. And that's the story of asking out my wife. I finally realized, look, if you don't ask her for a date, you're going to have regrets for the rest of your life. And the regret of not trying is way bigger than the regret of, well, she said no. And I have looked into scientific research since, and it's those once in a lifetime shots that I'm not good enough, and you don't even try, are the biggest regrets you will have in your life. And that raises your stress. And if you at least try, it's lower. And if you try and you get the date, the stress is way lower.
Absolutely. So what I love about your story is that when I was graduating high school, getting ready to go to college, I told my parents I wanted to go into broadcasting. This was 1968. There were very few, if any, women really in broadcasting. And my parents looked at me and they said, no, you'll never make it. You got to go be a teacher. That's what women do today. And I said, but I don't want to be a teacher. I don't mind if I teach people through broadcasting. My father said, what do you think you're going to be? I said, I want to go out and get stories. I want to be on the nightly news. I want to report those stories. And my father just said, I'm not paying for college if that's what you're going to do. You go to school, you get your teaching degree. Well, I wanted to go to school. So I went to school. Behind their back, I took all the communication courses. Didn't realize till the end of my second year that I had earned an associate's degree. So I called my parents up and I said, can you come to graduation? And they said, what are you talking about? You still have 2 more years to go. And I said, well, let me tell you something. And I told them. I didn't go through graduation. They were so disappointed that I had wasted their money. Now, back then, they were probably right. In 1970, there still were not enough women out there So my father said, okay, at some point, if you want to go back to school, it's on you. In the meantime, go get a job. I regretted all that until right after my father passed away in 2004. I heard something about podcasting, had no idea what it was. And my husband being in IT, I had the equipment available to me. He knew what microphone to get me and whatever. And I started podcasting. And people said, what are you doing? I said, I'm living my dream.
Love it.
I am a broadcaster. Let's skip to 2016. My mother is ill. I move up to Michigan to live with her for a while. I said to her, Mom, I'll be back in about an hour. I have to go in the living room. I'm going to do a podcast. She grabbed my hand and said, honey, are you a famous broadcaster? And my answer was, the most famous broadcaster in this house. And I've kept it that way because what makes you famous? Is it all the people who follow you? Is the paparazzi? Is it the dollars you make? I'm living my life.
Yes.
That's what makes it good.
Absolutely.
I learned from those mistakes.
I love that. I love that you're following your dream. That's so cool.
So tell me about your boys, because you're following your dream. You said you have 3 boys.
Right.
And one is in IT.
Yeah.
Now, is this where he wanted to be, or does he think, hey, I'm going to go follow in my dad's footsteps?
So we encourage them to follow whatever dream they had. And he is still working on his IT degree. His first degree was in music. And he said, I will do music for the rest of my life. And he is an incredible musician. He's written compositions. I have my walkout music for my keynotes is the William Tell Overture, performed by him. The version is written and performed by him. I have people doing the chicken dance in my keynote. Again, he and my middle son is also a musician, did the composition for that. So we all do the heavy metal chicken dance. I actually had an event where they got to play live behind me.
Love it.
So cool to have your own band, and they're free. But so he is very, very much into music. The middle son and he are in a heavy metal band that play around Cincinnati. They have done 3 EPs, albums, small, and they have done videos. And one of my rubber chickens is in their video. So down by the drums, I tell people it's down by the drums, extra drumsticks. And, yeah, joke. But okay, so that's the oldest. But he decided that, working in music, he learned a lot about computers, and he said there is really an opportunity to provide for my wife and our future kids and so on in that field. And he is studying app development, which he can pair with music, and security. And, unfortunately, there will always be a market for people who can do security for computers.
Right.
And he knows that. So it's a balance of follow the dream, but he's going to be practical about the IT part, but then merge them and never give up the music. And the 2 sons came into town and played at the Easter service yesterday. So we had their guitars, and I'm just like, a tear coming down Dad's eyes.
Sure. Yep.
Middle son is working for an accounting degree. He tried engineering, and he said the calculus he enjoyed, but a lot of the other stuff he didn't. I'm like, that's fine. Find what you love. And he said, I really like accounting. He works in a bank. He loves because he gets to deal with people, but he also understands the numbers really well. So that's where he's at, but still doing the guitar, playing the music, and enjoying that. The third son tried a little music, wasn't interested in it, is very much a social person, needs to work with other people, and he is education. He wants to be a middle school teacher. He works at our local YMCA as a counselor slash works with the young kids, does all the activities, tells me the stories of how he relates to these young kids. I was just like, this is what you were made to do. Just I will sometimes be on the track, walking on the track, and see him down there with the kids. I'm just like, the kids love him, but he also gets them to act the right way. Just that's his dream, and I'm so glad he's found it.
You know, it's interesting that want our listeners to know that I met Phil through podmatch.com.
Mhm.
Podmatch.com, many of us joke about the fact that it's a dating service for podcasters and guests to get together. um, what I love about it is that when I read your bio, I didn't even realize how much we had in common. The first thing is baseball and sports. Second is I lived in Cincinnati for 4 years, many, many years ago. So I know the city, I know the sports, I know what's going on there. And the IT and the music, because my son is very much into music as well as sports. So we got to let our children live their lives and follow their dreams. And I see that you froze on me.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I wanted to make sure that I could hear you.
Let me try
So,
something.
um,
How about now?
oh,
I took
boy,
the video
very
off.
distinguished looking there.
Okay, now you're back to the real me.
So tell us where our listeners can find your books because we all need a little humor and especially to push us forward to make the changes that we think we want.
So Amazon.com, search on Phil Barth. There's actually you'll see a Cleveland sports history book there. That was the first one I wrote. And the second one was called Great Things Happen Every Day. And that's kind of the story of how you can find great things. And it's the great things I found in my search. My wife said, you've been doing this on Facebook. Why didn't you write a book that those of us who aren't Cleveland sports fans would read? I'm like, all right. So I did it. And the third one will be available in paperback June 1st. And it's called Fry Your Chickens.
Love
And
it.
I love I love that idea. It's a smaller book, but it's got all of the advice just kind of packed in there. And it's got a really cool half AI generated, half I had somebody clean it up and make it into a real logo. It's a chicken in a frying pan, a cartoon chicken. So I, and side note, this was one of those things where I said, okay, Phil, you have been working on this book for 2 years. This was my New Year's resolution. Done by March 31st, period. And I got it done. There was some tweaks and edits behind it, and we're doing the big release June 1st on Kindle May 8th.
I love
And
it.
at philbarth.com, we'll link you to the books. We'll link you to Facebook, LinkedIn, all the socials. That was a
So,
long answer to
question I have to ask you, you live in Cincinnati, which is Cincinnati Reds territory.
yes.
Are you a Cincinnati Reds fan?
Only when they're not playing Cleveland.
Okay.
You,
So
you
if
can
you're a
get away with that.
Cincinnati Reds fan, what do you know about the Louisville Bats? They're only
It's,
an hour.
it's their minor league team, right?
Yes, they're your
Yeah,
AAA team.
yeah. They're Cincinnati's. I more follow Columbus because the Indians, now Guardians, were my first love and still love them. See, I've
I
got
love that.
that's Terry Francona right
Yeah.
there, who is now the manager in Cincinnati. And I thought, man, I wish him nothing but the best, except for the 6 times or 4 times or however many times we played him. Then, yeah, we got to beat him.
Well, I love it. Well, if you're ever interested in a Louisville Bats game, let me know. I
I,
think I have a connection of somebody who works there. Um,
is that your son?
yes, my son. And
I
I think
love
if
it.
the two of you ever talked sports, the two of you probably would go off in your corner and be there for days.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I got a high school friend that is still in the Cleveland area, and I watch on the internet, and he watches, and we text and talk, and sometimes we'll call and talk. Can you believe it? And when we get together, it is exactly that. I mean, there's the old high school memories and family, but then it's Cleveland sports.
I love it. Well, I love my Cleveland Guardians. They're not doing all that great right now, but that's okay. There's still a whole season ahead of us. Um, and I used to be a Cincinnati Reds fan, but I have to be again because of the Louisville Bats.
Yeah,
So, hey, they're national. We're American.
you
Doesn't
can,
matter.
you can absolutely get away with that. You cannot in football, but in baseball, you absolutely can.
You absolutely can. Well, thank you, Phil, for joining us. And all your information will be in the show notes. So I hope everybody goes out and buys this new book.
Yeah,
Thank
Karen,
you.
thank you so much for having me, and
Take
thank you
care.
for following your dream. I love it.
I do too. Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye.